We don't know what's being sprayed on this stuff. We're not in control of the delivery of this stuff.
Totally.
And we've just kind of delegated that responsibility, right?
We outsourced it to corporations.
We did it for convenience, right? And we never thought
100%.
it would come back to bite us.
Our potential, it's exponential.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another podcast of Abundant Souls. Today, we are going to help you empower yourself, phase out the system, and grow food at home. Today, we have Jen Reelitz. Thank you for joining us, Jen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. So, Jen, tell us, how did you get into food forests, growing food? Tell me about it.
Sure. So it's kind of I feel like it's a really normal story, but we bought this house in West Palm. I was having little babies. We had a backyard. This yard was like clearly owned by a Jamaican family. Ackee, Barbados cherry, mango, all kinds of interesting stuff in the yard. And they had a little garden bed, right? And it was just a super normal, like 10 by 10, railroad ties, like nothing fancy.
Yeah.
But there was something about it that just like spoke to me. I was like, okay, I need to use this space, right? And I had no idea how that ground had been cultivated. And this was back in the day when you could go to the dump and just like load your truck up with compost. So I was like, okay, my husband has this like, work truck. I'm going to go grab it. Grabbed a whole ton of compost, dumped it in the 10 by 10, started doing your tomatoes and kale and all your winter veggies, and just really was amazed by how much abundance you could get in a really small space.
Where was this?
This was in West Palm.
Perfect.
So this was I was born and raised in West Palm. I'm a native.
Love it.
And then sort of along the way, I kind of had a mentor.
Who?
And this friend, Heather Dorsey.
Amazing.
She's in her early 60s. I was just kind of starting out in life. I think I was engaged. I was getting ready to be married. It was one of those things where, they say show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right? I've always believed in mentoring and always kind of looked for people who are doing things that I want to be doing or have character integrity. When I'm 60, I want to be like them,
Yes.
And so I had known her way back in high school. We reconnected at a social gathering, and she was like, hey, would you like to grab coffee? And I was like, yeah. So we grabbed coffee, and she was like, would you like to do this once a month? And I was like, I would love that. So we start once a month, just grabbing coffee, just being friends, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, she was on her own journey. She lives in a part of West Palm that's the least likely area to find a food forest. She lives in El Cid, 1 block from Flagler. How many food forests are on Flagler? I haven't seen that many, right?
She has fruit trees and stuff?
Legit, unbelievable. She
I love it.
planted all edible landscaping
Wow.
10 years ago.
Is it popping?
It's gorgeous. It's ridiculous. So at that time, she was really into it. And so every birthday, she'd buy me a fruit tree. She bought me this book, Florida's Best Fruiting Plants. She was like, hey, you want to go to Excalibur? Let's go to Mounts, right? And so it was kind of through that friendship that I started getting interested in
Amazing.
how about we grab an avocado or a star fruit or whatever. So then around the same time,
Your fruit tree friend.
totally, it's my fruit tree
Heather.
friend. Yeah, she got me hooked,
That's
right?
amazing.
So she was the gateway. And then I started to watch some YouTube, right? And so I was like, all right, I heard the idea of food forest, and that sounded captivating. I was like, what is a food? That's so interesting. What is that?
Right.
And so I think the first influencer I came across was David the Good.
He's awesome.
And he was just funny and engaging and just really easy to watch and made things super simple. And but I almost became a student. I wasn't just consuming content. I was like taking notes, right? Because they were mentioning these weird plants like katut, like what is that? Like I'd never heard of any of these plants before. I'd never seen them, right?
And you wanted to learn it.
And I wanted to learn.
Me too. I remember that.
So
I remember highlighting in my books and stuff. I'm like, I'm an adult.
Yes, I was legit like taking notes. And it was in
Cool.
a season where I had a little bit more time, but I had a little bit less time because I was right in the middle of like having babies. So I was like up in the middle of the night and like breastfeeding,
Amazing.
doing all the random things.
How
I was
long ago
also
was
taking
this?
notes.
When was this?
This was 5-6 years ago.
Amazing.
Right? And so I just kind of became a student of it. Right? And then I came across, Pete Canaris and James Piglione and all those guys, right? And just consumed tons of content and decided that I wanted to do this because it just made so much sense on a lot of levels, right? On the one hand, like I'm a mother, right? Like nobody else is responsible to feed my children. I just had this kind of conviction that like we're super dependent on this system that doesn't have our best interests at heart, right? Like we don't know.
That's the end of the sentence.
Legit.
That counts for sure.
We don't know what's being sprayed on this stuff. We're not in control of the delivery of this stuff.
Totally.
And we've just kind of delegated that responsibility, right?
We outsourced it to corporations.
We did it for convenience, right? And we never thought
100%.
it would come back to bite us. But the more that I looked into it, I saw this stat that just blew my mind from the Smithsonian. And it was that in 1945, 50% of Americans were growing food in their backyard. And they produced half of all the produce in the United States.
They produced half of the produce.
Half.
Now I wonder what that stat is. It's coming out the backyards.
We know what it is.
It's
Unfortunately.
it's probably 0.5.
It's really low. Yeah.
Less.
Yeah. So it's like, so that generation to do that level of production, right? They had the knowledge, they had the skills,
Yeah.
they were
and that's
resilient.
75 years, 80 years.
Exactly.
That's a second.
But we lost so much in that time.
Yeah.
Right? And so my big thing to people is
It's
like,
so
listen,
true.
it hasn't always been this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
That's
like
beautiful.
we can get back to that. We can regain that knowledge, regain those skills. We can teach our children. Like they don't have to be reliant on this stuff in the store that, again, we don't know what was sprayed on it. It's not being grown in nutrient-rich soil. Like you have to eat like 3 heads of broccoli a day to equal the nutritional value of 1 head of broccoli in 1945. Like this is just crazy because of right? Modern agriculture,
Totally agree.
the way they're depleting the soil. And so I kind of got into it almost out of like a mama bear instinct that I have babies and it's my job to make sure that they're getting like the most nutritious food. And
amazing.
The more that I got into it, the more I realized the myriad of reasons that it matters, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah, but that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the vitality, like your kids, are they eating out of the food forest? Do they know the plants and stuff like that?
Oh, they do. Yeah. And besides food forest, we're also really into foraging. So we love going out in River Bend, finding medicinal plants, finding edible plants. I mean, my 4-year-old could identify more native and, just medicinal plants, I think, than your average, like what we'd call a grown-up, right? Like more than most grown-ups.
Totally.
Just because it's
4-year-old.
It's part of, he's like, oh, look at that plantago. Like, look at that greenbrier, right? Because that's what we're doing. So it's normal for him.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kids, it is important for the kids to get around it, to learn. Because like you said, we've lost so much in 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's
like,
totally insane.
Knowledge-wise and just lifestyles, practices.
And we're paying for it. So I think it was Joel Salat and I heard recently saying that back in the 1940s, we were spending double what we spend now on food, right? So it cost more, but it was locally produced. You knew the farmer who grew it. You knew the cattle rancher personally, right? But at that time, we spent half as much on healthcare. Today, we spend half the amount on food. So we're spending less on food, but we're spending double.
on healthcare.
Right?
So we're
Because
making up for it.
correct, because we're buying
Shoot.
cheap garbage that's like not real food, right?
Yeah.
Like all this processed stuff that's making us sick, that's making us overweight, that's right. So it's like all of these health issues is because we stopped eating real food. We started
Totally, Jen.
letting the corporations put all this stuff that we just know is inflammatory. We know it's not good for us. We know, I mean, literally they're finding like endocrine disruptors in the plastic packaging.
Wow.
What? We're screwing with hormones? Like, what is going
Yeah.
on? Like, this explains a lot. Like,
And
we can do better.
We could do better. I love that. And honestly, gardening's just the start of all that stuff that's going to solve those problems. You know, you don't need plastic packaging when you're growing it in the ground.
No. And then the mental health aspects. Like, people don't think about that enough.
It's true. Like Tulsi, for example, is super medicine, grows like a weed. Like
Yeah.
I want it in every garden of mine, of everybody's.
Totally.
And I'll explain it to some people sometimes, and they might not understand that aspect of it's like it's a tea. This is a tea. It's not basil for bruschetta, which is
Right.
amazing. I love that basil too. But this is for our nervous system,
Yes.
like for stress and all these anxiety.
Yes.
Like this is what our ancestors used to use for this stuff.
Yes. And
powerful.
even just the process, like even just being outside in the sun,
Totally.
hands in the dirt, around the plants, right? And I mean, I think it was like university level studies show that gardening, what they call horticultural therapy in the UK, they'll actually prescribe it to people. Like psychiatrists in London will prescribe, like,
Good.
you need to get out of the city and go get in a garden. And they'll like write a script, like horticultural therapy. It can alleviate mild depression, anxiety. When you get dirt stuck under your fingernails, the soil has a mycobacterium that triggers the release of dopamine, serotonin. It lowers your cortisol. It makes you less stressed.
I feel it
There's
too.
just 100 reasons, you know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Horticultural therapy.
Legit.
I want to go get me some of that.
Legit. All the time. That's why we're happy. I joke with people when people
So
say,
true.
my garden is my happy place. That's a real thing. Like that's scientifically verifiable. You will actually be happier.
Wow.
And if there's any generation that needs to hear this message, that needs to get out in the garden, that needs to feel connection to the earth, it's the generation that's coming.
Totally.
Because they're so in their screens and they're so online and they're so whatever.
And it's not their fault. Like we threw it in their
No.
face, society.
Totally. And it's addictive. Like of course, why wouldn't they
Totally.
be, right? They got hooked on it when they were like 6. I have
It's a good point. They need this.
I have a neighbor who's like a young guy, he's like college age. And it was right around like the lockdowns, right? So like pandemic lockdowns, people are scared, they're acting whatever. And he comes for a walk and I'm out in my front yard, like watering my watermelon patch. I was like, hey, how are you? And he's like, good. And I kind of felt like, no, like really? Like, how are you? And he just began to share about like the depression and anxiety and all the stuff that he was going through. And he said, you know, I just feel so disconnected like to the material world, because he'd spent the last couple weeks on screens consuming like all the fear and all the paranoia.
Yeah.
And I was like, come garden with me, right? And like, so we're still
Amazing.
friends to this day, right? And he's been teaching me the most amazing cassava, like, you know, he makes legit like
That's so
cassava
cool.
cheesecake and like
No
just stuff.
way.
Oh yeah, you
From the
haven't.
flour?
No,
Wow.
just from the like the raw root. He doesn't even make the flour. It's amazing. It's
Sick.
amazing. But so it's just like, I think there's something about connection to the earth that's really important for us. And this generation is losing that faster than any generation in history. And I think we're paying a price. I mean, never when I was growing up did I ever hear of like a 6th grader committing suicide.
Right.
That just wasn't a thing.
No,
You
it's
never.
Regular.
It's
every
becoming
year.
regular.
Dude. And yeah, it is. It's a good point, man. We need to connect
Totally.
to the earth and with each other, and we'll, 'cause
Yeah.
we lose sight of who we are
Totally.
in the screens.
Yeah. Yeah. We're losing people. We're losing them physically. We're losing them emotionally. We're losing, right, again, mental health issues.
And it's a paradox because we're here on the screen trying to reach people.
Totally.
You know what I mean? But
Totally.
it's so intertwined. So let's talk about like solutions
Yes.
for that, because
Yes.
you and I both know what's going on? How can we, like, what are some resources for people, or like things people could do
Totally.
that could unlock?
Well, I think people have to look at, again, where their food is coming from, how it's being produced, the space that they have. Like, everyone's solutions are going to be different, right? For some people,
Totally. Context.
Yes. Context is key. Context is king, right? They're in an apartment. Maybe the solution for them, and they don't have a patio, right? Might be like an indoor hydroponic, aeroponic thing, right? They have a small space. It might be more of like your raised bed model, right? Or they have a lot of land where like food forest would make sense for them, even if they're
People
not.
have more land than they think too. There's
Totally.
a lot of land out there still.
You can do a ton in a small space. I think for me, the key is constantly reminding people that if you actually want to feed your family, like, you can't just grow cherry tomatoes. Like, I love cherry tomatoes,
It's
but
true.
you've got to do
You need cassava.
the calories,
You
right?
need bananas.
Legit.
Calories.
Yes, the staple crops, right? And a lot of
so
that.
what are some of those?
Sure. So I would say like tropical potatoes, right? So
Yeah.
your yucca, your malanga, your name yams, your sweet potatoes, of course, bananas, beans, pigeon pea, right? Your greens that are high in protein, right? Your chaya, your moringa, your katuk. I think what's exciting for me is that, of course, we want this message of food forest to get out to just kind of your average person with a house. But what really makes me like wake up in the morning and want to do this is the idea of what if we could start partnering with government, with nonprofit, with whoever, and start planting food forest and doing education in places where there's really serious poverty, in places where people are not eating right because they can't afford it. And the only thing that's being given out by these government food banks is like processed, stuff that just isn't good for them. Literally, people who live in poverty have a life expectancy that's 15 years lower than the national average. Right? That's crazy.
Wow.
And we can fix it. We can be a part of the solution. And so,
Yeah, with nonprofits and charities and
totally. And that's
being
the world.
resourceful.
Yes.
Because we need to be. Because
Yes.
it's stacked against them. It's true.
100%. 100%.
Like churches, there's so much space out there we could utilize.
Yes. There's so much land that's being severely underutilized. And so I actually just heard of this legit project that I'm going to go see in Tampa. There's a church over there that started this thing. They're calling it Operation Eden. They took 5 acres and they did food forests. They did these massive greenhouses. They even did a processing plant so they can make like jelly, jam, salsa, like soup to nuts. We're doing all the production.
That stuff
right?
inspires me so hard.
Yeah.
They
and
just put Operation Eden and it just happened.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah. Within the last
Shout
year.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's called the river at Tampa Bay.
Okay.
And they really believe that what they've built there is a model. And they want to see that happen in every county in Florida.
Amazing.
Right?
I honestly say take it a step further. Every like couple blocks.
Yes. Yes.
Like literally Jupiter Farms could have 10 of those.
Oh, we could be pumping
10.
like unbelievable.
Yeah, a true processing facility.
Yes.
It's not just, you stick a tree in the ground and you peace out. Where are my mangoes? It's a total, it's connectedness.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then even for your people who say, I'm super busy. I can't do this, whatever. Where are you buying your food?
That's it.
Right?
If you have that's the thing. Because it's like, I have an apartment I can't grow. Sure. Who are you supporting?
Totally.
Respect.
Totally.
That's so true, Jen.
Farmers markets. I recently found a local dairy that I'm like so stoked about. It's called Sutton Milk out in Okeechobee.
Cool.
Milk, dairy. It's like if we want to have local cattle ranchers, local dairy, we have to support them. We have to support them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially like back to your point, I wanted to mention this earlier with the grocery stores, everything getting higher. Even though things are decreasing, like our grocery store bill,
Yeah.
all of the real foods. Have you noticed how all the real foods are going up in price?
Mm-hmm.
And everything, Ritz crackers might be going down, but whatever. But that's the truth, right?
Well, and the quality is so different. I posted a picture to my Instagram. I cracked an egg into my frying pan that was from my chickens, and I cracked an egg into a frying pan that was from Publix. And the difference in color in the yolk is unbelievable. My chicken's yolk is this like bright, vibrant orange. Literally, when I go to make egg salad, I don't need as much mayo because the oil content in the yolk is so high. I don't need as much, right? Whereas the egg from the store, like comparatively, was gross. It was like this light yellow color. I was thinking like, so was this egg laid by a chicken in a factory farm like 1,000 miles away that from birth to death never saw the sun, never ate a blade of grass? What is this? Why are we doing this? Eggs is one of those most simple to produce. It makes so much sense. Like we could save millions of tons of kitchen scraps from going to landfills.
Totally, for chickens.
Right? We could
Local
get compost
chickens.
from the garden.
It would change the game.
Totally.
If everyone had chicken. That's so true.
Totally. Literally, if 1 in 3 Americans, I think this is Joel Salatin, if 1 in 3.
I read that. Tell me.
If 1 in 3 Americans got chickens, we would no longer have an egg industry in this country. It would be
1 in 3 Americans.
Totally unnecessary.
And I think it would be, honestly, that's it. 1 in 10 might do it. They're
Totally.
so productive.
Totally. And we would save so much from going into the landfills.
Yeah, shout out to Joel Salatin because he changed my life too. Like, Folks, This Ain't Normal is such a sick book. He talked about that. He was like, man, we could change the world.
We could.
If we like took this more seriously.
Yes.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
he's iconic.
Yes.
As Jean Martin says.
And again, it's so good for kids, right? Like every morning, my 8-year-old, so you've got your early birds and your night owls, right? And so
Yes.
I've got a 6-year-old who's just like me. He's totally a night owl. My oldest is just like my husband. He's like up at 6. So I was like, hey, so you're the first one up and the animals are up and they're hungry. So he's out there feeding the birds, feeding the pigs, like they're involved in taking care of the animals and cultivating the ground. Like they're just having a life that's beautiful and they feel so much more connected, right? And I think there's so much value in that hands-on learning, that kind of understanding where things come from and why and how. And
Beautiful.
You can't learn it in a book.
No. Creation.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So, and that's life force energy, that egg. It's vitality. Like you could see it in it.
Yep.
Like it's
We've hatched our own eggs. They've gone through that process of hatching quail, hatching chickens.
So how do the animals have a part in this whole system? Does it affect the kids too in their life and everything?
It's huge. Honestly, I just think my kids are healthier, right? They're healthier because they're getting this like nutrient rich veggies and eggs. And we don't know the antibiotics. Like we don't know what they've been doing to this stuff. And anyway, obviously, like I feel like public trust in institutions is not real high right now.
Yeah. But no, that was a relatively new phenomenon too, World War II, right? That same time frame, 40s,
Totally.
So yeah, it's just like losing sight of what is going on,
Totally.
in a lot of ways. Like, but I went to this really cool facility to just on a side note that on the other coast before the storm that knocked them out.
Yeah.
Pine Island.
Okay.
It was this amazing community. They grew all their mangoes. And they had a processing facility just like that.
Yes.
And it was super inspiring. And the guy who was taking me around just like, welcome, like whatever you want. He was giving me goat milk and all these things, grains they grew, mate they grew, all this cool stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, and just living large, and just giving and just grateful.
Yes.
For this day. But I asked them, why, like, what do you use those animals for? What are those sheep for? They're like, man, they're really just to lift our spirits. I'm like, wow, that was so deep.
We sort of were having that happen with the pigs. We had these super cool heritage breed pigs. They're called Coon. They're one of 3 breeds of pasture pig They could literally just live on pasture. They don't need feed. Of course, we do give them feed, but they don't need it.
You love on them.
We love on them. They're so gentle with kids. They have a super sweet temperament.
Coon pigs?
Yep. If I get in the pen, they literally all just will like lay down around me because they all want belly rubs. They're producing manure and compost that naturally would take 6 months to a year. They produce it in a day, right? Like animals in the system makes so much sense. But part of my story that I kind of forgot, not that I forgot, but I was so excited about Food Forest. Like part of the reason we moved to Jupiter Farms was because I wanted more land, right? And so we build this Food Forest and people come over and they're like, hey, I want to see your renovated kitchen. I'm like, forget the kitchen. Come see the Food Forest. So I was like all about it, like showing all my friends all the time, like inside, forget that. Let's go outside. So I started, because I had so many people who were interested in Food Forest, I started maybe once a month on a Saturday throwing it up on like a Jupiter Farms mom's page, like, hey, we're going to do a Food Forest tour at 10, like come by if you want to. And over maybe a year and a half, 2 years, every time there were 10, 15, 20 people showing up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How many people have you walked through your land the last couple of years?
300, 400, easy.
Giving them cuttings.
Yeah. And now with YouTube stuff, I mean, I don't know, we're probably like 10,000. It's a lot. And so it's just been, I was really passionate about education because I knew that so much of this is like really new for people. These are crops they've never seen before. They don't know how to use them. And I was constantly explaining to people, listen, there are 10,000 edible varieties of plants. Only 150 are in your grocery store, okay? And they're not there because they're the most delicious, the most nutritious. They're commercially convenient to pack and ship. They have a thick skin and a long shelf life. That's why they're there, right? So we're going to have to be willing to educate ourselves on plants that we have no familiarity with, but that doesn't mean they're not amazing, right? Yeah. And my classic example is the mulberry, right? I'll be like, all right, raise your hand if you've had a mulberry. You know, a couple people raise their hands. Why do you think that there are blackberries in the store, but not mulberries? Mulberries are sweeter. They have more antioxidants. They're actually better for you. But the moment you pick them, they're ready to eat, right? They're not going to sit on a shelf or a train or a truck for 3 weeks and still look good.
Zero shelf life.
And actually, most things I pull out of my garden, if you were to look at them 3 weeks later, they would not be okay. So it makes you wonder, like, what they're, you know, the voodoo they do to the food. But it's just, totally. It's one of those things where I just was super passionate about teaching people, showing people they could see it, they could taste it. And that's kind of how the business aspect started for me, was just seeing like, wow, there's such a hunger for this. There's such a market for this.
Totally.
We live in a county of 1 million people. We could easily, hundreds or thousands of people could be doing this and we wouldn't be oversaturated. And there's like a half a dozen, right? It's like we need so much more.
Are you a nonprofit?
No. So my business is a for-profit.
Okay.
And we partner with nonprofits.
That's right.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah. I was in the nonprofit world for about 10 years of my career. So that's what I was just coming out of. So that's kind of a world that's like real familiar. And
now you're doing this full time.
Yes. Yes.
Sick.
Just recently quit the nonprofit in December. So
congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, planting trees.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Oh my gosh, I've never had more fun.
Isn't it the best?
Yes.
So Jen, you're a DIY specialist. Tell people about kind of your model and your business.
Totally. Yeah, so I named the business Food Forest DIY because I'm a DIYer and I love working with DIYers, right? I love people who want to get their hands dirty and want to learn. And so when I'm done with a food forest, I'm like, hey, you're a farmer now, right? Like, I really want you to get into this, to learn it. And
I love that.
Right? And then there was a time where I was really thinking about kind of what's my vision, what's my mission, obviously like food forests everywhere. But I think when you get down to it, it's also helping people find joy and satisfaction in growing food, right? And so for me, I'm a lazy gardener, right? So I'm like, all right, what is like the most low maintenance, like you could just set it and forget it? I think that Food Forest gets close to that, you know?
Totally.
And
Yeah. The set it and forget it stuff where,
bananas.
let it go. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you do maintain a little bit, but in general, you can just kind of let it be and nature does its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to plant some more bananas.
Always. Pigeon peas, always. You know, and then there was this one point where I was sketching for the logo and I was thinking about like, you know, what is something that would symbolize kind of like what we're doing. And I thought about kind of like, you know, the fork, right? Because food and the leaf and the whatever. But what really came to me was an arrowhead. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, why the arrowhead? And so we put this kind of like leaf on top of an arrowhead and it looked really cool. But I was kind of praying about it and I was like, so what is up with the leaf and the arrowhead? And I feel like God said to me, food is a weapon. And I was like, oh,
Food is a weapon.
Food is a weapon. Okay. And just that, you know, honestly, if you look back through human history of governments and tyrants, you know, it's known, control the food, control the people.
Yeah. That's when revolution begins, when people are hungry.
Absolutely.
Not a second before that moment.
Absolutely. And the only way that you ever resist a tyrannical government or an invading force or whatever is through a resistance. But
Stock your arms.
Somebody's
your weapons of
somebody's
food.
got to feed that resistance, right?
It's
Like
food,
they're not
yeah.
going to run on fumes. Like you actually have to be able to produce something, right? To maintain that.
Stay fed.
Yeah. Stay free. I'm serious.
Stay free. I love it.
Stay free. Grow food. Don't be dependent. Like we're just getting kind of to this like almost scary dystopian place where like they want to go digital money. Like if you didn't like somebody, could you just turn that off?
Yeah.
Right? Could the government just take it? There's like a terrifying story coming out of Seattle of like these folks who worked for Amazon. And the way it worked was Amazon was going to get fined like $100,000 because they fucked up. And if they didn't find an employee whose fault it was, they'd be sued. So they found an employee who hadn't done anything wrong. And the government, working in collusion with Amazon, just seized all their assets. So we took all your bank accounts, we took all your everything, right? And it's just like we're just getting to a place where this is just too dangerous. This is too we have to be stronger than this. We have to be more independent than this. We have to be more resilient than this. Because we are, for all of human history, we were.
Yeah.
We grew our own, we did our own, we could take care of ourselves. We weren't like dependent babies.
I
Go to the
feel you.
store every 3 days.
And that's insane. They're framing this dude. I mean, yeah.
It's
And
a crazy story.
And the commercials keep playing. Hey, we're your friend. We're your friend. It's just, I think you're right. I think, yeah, the jig's up.
Dude, come on.
So, yeah, take that for real. Yeah.
Food is a weapon.
Food is a weapon.
Yeah.
What's popping right now for you? What are you working on?
In terms of like projects or plants?
Anything.
Anything.
Plants.
Okay.
Plants. How about?
Sure. So many things in plants. Bananas like all the time. Like, and I always get excited when I see a new flower. Like, there's another one. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I love it. It's never not exciting.
Yeah.
I've got, let's see, black Suriname cherry loaded with flowers. This is actually the first year that it's made like just tons and tons of fruit. You
It's
know,
productive.
yeah, mangoes are blooming.
Yep.
I could be harvesting yucca for, I don't know, half a year and I'd still be fine. Love finding like new recipes for yucca. You know, yucca con mojo, yucca fries. I'm going to try making a yucca like flatbread pizza tomorrow. Going to see how that goes. Just take some cooked chunks in a blender with an egg and some oil, put it on a pan. You have a gluten-free pizza.
Amazing.
Yeah, why not? Super excited about using green papaya more because my papayas are all loaded. And it's just like, dude, we've got like free vegetables on the trees. We got to figure this out. So made some more Thai green papaya salad last night. It was so good. The guests I had over were all going back for seconds. So I was like, all right, we did it. We
Yeah,
did
just
it.
don't tell them it's papaya. They would be like, this cabbage is amazing.
There are some things you just don't tell them. It's totally like that with nopales, right? With your prickly pear cactus.
Yeah, how do you use those?
All right. So if you go to a Mexican place, right, like guacamoles, right, by the farms, and you get like a fajita bowl, it's totally in almost all Mexican dishes. They just call it nopales because they know these Americans, they're a little hoity-toity. You call it cactus, they're probably not going to eat it. You use it just like a bell pepper.
Right.
So, I mean, chili, omelets, like literally however you would cook bell pepper, you can substitute nopales. Nopales is pest resistant, drought tolerant.
Crushes.
Literally, you
And beautiful.
do nothing to it.
And super beautiful, right?
Yes, gorgeous. And it needs no fertilizer, no it's the least dramatic, least needy plant you could possibly imagine.
And it's a bell pepper alternative year round.
Year round.
Amazing.
Come on.
Oh my God. So you made let's go back to the papaya salad.
Yes.
Yeah, that is something people don't know about too, because they look for the ripe ones, and most of the time it's hit by the bugs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
unless you're bagging them. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't get to the ripe ones a lot, but the green ones you could use for kimchi. We've been doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
What do you make a Asian salad with it?
So easy. Literally. So you cut it up, you take the seeds out, you shred it. Like you just like you would grate a carrot, right? Like you're just using a shredder grater type thing. You make like an Asian ginger dressing. You can just eat it raw like that. My favorite way though, a friend who's Asian taught me how to make pickled papaya. Pickled papaya is next level incredible. You boil some vinegar and sugar for about 5 minutes. You let the papaya just be in there for like 2 minutes. Then you put it in a jar of vinegar and let it kind of ferment in the fridge. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I love that.
So good. And it keeps for weeks. It's so good for your gut. Like there's just so many reasons. Like, why not?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we didn't have a fridge, you could keep those for a week or two, right? It's amazing.
Yes.
So cool.
We have so much to learn from immigrant farmers, right? I've had the great opportunity to travel to East Africa, to Asia, to some really cool parts of the world.
So cool.
And folks who are don't have refrigeration, right?
Serious.
And we have so much to learn. I'm so glad that Baker's Creek and Josh Jameson and all those guys are just an echo, right? Like really connected with the global community because we're getting new crops, right? We're getting with just really cool stuff because, some guy in West Africa sent seeds to Echo and, now we all get to
it's amazing.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Stewards of the land everywhere.
Totally.
But we do have so much to learn from our,
Mercy.
the
Yes.
the indigenous.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Because we have it good. Mm-hmm. But it's good. Yeah,
but we've got to be more resilient. This system is just way too fragile, right? So just in time logistics and transport means that if for any reason, the trucks stop coming, grocery stores are out of food in 3 days. You've got tens of millions of people who are totally dependent. And, they grew up.
All of our parents.
Absolutely. They grew up, okay, the store will always have food and I'll always be able to afford to buy it. Dude, normalcy bias? No, this is just, we have to do better.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's why I'm so glad I'm having you on. You're teaching people how to do it and opening up your land and giving plants away and helping homeowners plant trees in their yards. So
yes.
I really want to acknowledge you for your effort and, and what you're doing.
It's so satisfying to go back. So I had this one lady who came on a food forest tour 2 years ago. And when I was doing tours in the beginning, man, I just gave cuttings and seeds to everybody. It didn't matter if I knew you, didn't know you. You were my, neighbors, cousins, whoever. And so she took, I think it was a chaya cutting and a piece of prickly pear. And I was at her yard in Gardens 2 weeks ago. Her chaya is 9-10 feet tall. Her prickly pear is 5 feet tall. It was just so gratifying to see this is growing and being used, and we're changing landscapes, we're changing families, we're increasing awareness. There's just not a downside.
Heck yeah, Jen. Well, thank you for coming. Is there anything else you want to share with the world? Anything.
Oh, man.
I love what you said, though. Like, not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but resilience.
Resilience.
We need to be more resilient.
Yes.
Like like I really appreciate your insights.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else?
No, I mean, I think we just, again, we got like lulled to sleep, right, by society. Like, it's just so convenient. It's just so easy. It'll always be there. You can trust us. There's nothing weird like in the food or the packaging. And it's like, so I think people are waking up. Like, COVID made people wake up. Like, oh, this system is fragile. Like, we only have a couple of meat processing plants in the country. Like, what were we thinking? Why did we allow this kind of corporatization and centralization to happen to the food supply? Because then you get one disease, you get one pandemic, you get one disruption, and the whole thing, it's fragile.
It's fragile.
And so, when I was in college, I was doing some research on economics, and I read this book on Buddhist economics, and it was called Small is Beautiful. And I think we've lost that concept that, like, just because it's small, right, doesn't mean it's not beautiful. And we're so focused on scaling, and we're so focused on, getting big and whatever,
right,
that we lose that, like, personal connection, right? And there are other...
What about our next generation? What
Totally.
about other variables?
Totally.
I totally agree.
Totally. And the only thing, at least for me, the only thing that's eternal is people. And so that connection matters, right?
The only thing that is eternal is people.
People. So relationships matter, integrity matters. And I think, the bigger you get, the more you scale, the more you lose that connection. And I think it's valuable. I think it's something like really pure about that connection, that relationship, that one-to-one, right? And so there are models of even what we do, right? That are interesting, that are worth looking at, but you lose the purity of that connection. Like, hey, we're going to draw you a food forest design, but we never even walked on your property, right? Like, we just looked at an image from Google Earth and we had a phone call. And I just think there's something about that personal connection, that local relationship that matters. So, you've got people who are like, are you going to go nationwide? Are you going to whatever? And it's like, dude, I just care about my community. Like, I just get super stoked when I drive down a road in the farms and I see more fruit trees. I see a family that's doing it. Like, amazing.
Yeah.
We just need that to happen over and over and over. We need it for the earth. We need it for our physical health. We need it for our mental health. And we need it for the next generation, because they've just, we've got to do it.
We've got to do it.
We've got to do it.
Let's get to it. I'm going to go plant. You pumped me up. Thank you, Jen, for coming.
Totally. Thank you for having me, Jack.
Horticultural therapy.
Yeah, all day.
Heck yeah.